The briefing room was dimly lit, the fluorescent bulbs flickering occasionally, as though struggling to keep pace with the urgency that filled the air. A half-empty coffee cup sat on the edge of the table, its bitter aroma mingling with the scent of sweat and leather from the team's gear. Maps sprawled across the tabletop, marked with pins, lines, and annotations that represented every nuance of the mission ahead. The room seemed smaller than it should have, compressed under the weight of expectation, fear, and adrenaline. SEAL. Team Alpha sat around the table, their faces drawn and focused. Each man had a story etched into the lines of his jaw, and the set of his eyes stories of long nights, grueling training, and missions that had left ghosts behind. Lieutenant Mason, the team leader, scanned the room, noting the tension that crackled in the air like static before a storm. He did not speak yet. He let the silence stretch, a silent acknowledgement that all present understood what was at stake. The mission itself was one of the most dangerous in recent memory. Intelligence reports had placed a group of heavily armed militants in a remote village nestled in a rugged mountain range. The village served as a hub for planning attacks, and intelligence indicated hostages were being held there. The SEALs were tasked with infiltrating, neutralizing the threats, and extracting both the hostages and themselves undetected. One wrong move could mean disaster, not just for the team, but for those they were sworn to protect. Mason finally cleared his throat. We've trained for months, studied every inch of this terrain, every possible approach. Tonight, it all matters. This is not a drill. Lives depend on us, yours, mine, and the civilians we're going in to save. You all know the stakes. Corporal Harris, a seasoned operator whose calm demeanor often anchored the team, nodded sharply. He studied the maps as if memorizing every shadow and ridge. We've done the simulations. We know the risks, he said, voice low but firm. We also know what failure looks like. No mistakes. Not tonight. The rest of the team murmured assent, their eyes scanning the schematics of the village and the surrounding terrain. Mason pointed to a series of winding ridges that led to the village. This is our primary approach. The path is narrow. Loose rocks, uneven footing. Cover is limited. Expect to be observed. Expect resistance immediately upon arrival. Lieutenant Davis, the youngest on the team, but fast becoming indispensable, leaned forward. What about alternate exfil routes? If the mission goes sideways, we need options. Mason nodded. Route B is viable, but it's exposed and could slow us down. We're counting on speed, stealth, and surprise. We stick to the plan. We adapt if necessary, but hesitation could cost lives. Understand? The room was silent for a moment, the weight of those words sinking in. Each operator understood the razor-thin line between mission success and failure. They had trained for countless scenarios, but nothing replicated the unpredictable nature of actual combat. Medical and communications personnel were introduced briefly, outlining their roles and the extraction plan. Every SEAL knew that once they crossed the tree line, there would be no room for error. No backup was immediate. The mountain terrain would delay reinforcements. Their only lifeline was each other, and the invisible thread of trust that bound them together. Private First Class Reed, the team's communications expert, ran through frequencies, encryption protocols, and emergency signals. If you're separated, follow standard extraction procedures. Maintain line of sight if possible. Keep comms clear. Failure to comply could jeopardize everyone. His voice was calm, technical, almost emotionless, but the room absorbed every word with deadly seriousness. Mason tapped the table lightly, drawing their attention. We're going in at 2,200 hours. Night provides cover, but it also conceals dangers. You'll move as one unit. Silence is mandatory. Every decision must be deliberate. Watch each other's six. Trust instinct. Trust training. And trust each other. The phrase hung in the room like smoke, heavy and palpable. Every man understood the unspoken reality. Death was not impossible. It was a shadow always present, lurking behind the rocks, waiting for one misstep, one wrong calculation. Yet alongside that fear was a steel-forged determination. They had survived before, and they would survive again. They stood, methodically donning tactical vests, body armor, night vision goggles, and weapons checked to perfection. The ritual was familiar, almost comforting, but tonight it carried a weight heavier than usual. Boots were tightened, straps adjusted, and a final nod exchanged among team members signaled readiness. Outside, the night was a blanket of darkness, pierced only by the occasional moonlight glinting off jagged rocks. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of earth and pine, a stark contrast to the intensity in the briefing room. Mason led the team to the vehicles, each movement deliberate, quiet, and practiced. The hum of engines broke the silence only briefly before fading behind them as they approached the drop-off point. As the vehicles neared the edge of the operational zone, the team switched to stealth mode. Engines shut down, gear adjusted. Comms checked one final time. Hearts beat with anticipation and adrenaline. The mountains loomed ahead, jagged sentinels guarding the village. Every seal moved with the precision of a predator, muscles taut, senses sharpened to the environment. Mason paused at the tree line, glancing at his team. The moonlight caught the sweat on their faces, illuminating eyes that reflected fear, courage, and determination. "Remember," he whispered, voice almost swallowed by the wind, "every step could be your last. But we do this together. No one is left behind. Eyes open. Move fast, and trust your brothers." One by one, they slipped into the shadows, disappearing into the night like ghosts. The trees swallowed their figures as the mountain terrain closed in around them. Silence dominated, broken only by the crunch of boots on loose stone and the occasional distant call of nocturnal wildlife. Even in the shadowed forest, the team remained hyper-aware. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, every shift in wind direction was processed and catalogued. Adrenaline sharpened senses to a point where even breathing had to be measured. The village was still miles away, yet every step carried the weight of potential death. As they approached a high ridge overlooking the village, Mason signaled for a halt. He scanned the horizon through binoculars, eyes narrowing as faint silhouettes moved below. Enemy scouts. He counted them silently, marking positions, patterns, and potential ambush points. Harris joined him, adding insight and confirming what Mason already suspected: the village was prepared, fortified, and dangerous. Mason lowered his binoculars and turned to his team. "We're going to face resistance immediately. Expect a fight. Expect casualties. Our success depends on discipline, precision, and courage. Keep your heads. Trust your training. Trust each other. And if you believe in God, now is the time to pray." The words were not meant to comfort, yet they did. Silence stretched, each man lost in his thoughts, summoning faith, courage, or memories that fueled resolve. Then, with a subtle gesture, Mason signaled forward. The SEALs advanced along the ridge, crouched low, weapons ready. The first glimpses of the village emerged, faint fires illuminating dirt paths, watchtowers, and armed guards. Shadows danced against the stone buildings, hints of motion betraying alertness. Every sense was alive, every heartbeat measured, controlled, yet thundering in the chest like war drums. The night had become a crucible, testing nerves, discipline, and the ability to act under the ever-present shadow of death. Each man knew that within minutes, seconds even, the mission could spiral into chaos. Yet they moved forward, trained, disciplined, and bonded by the knowledge that only together could they survive. For the first time, the faint whisper of prayer passed among them, not desperate, but resolute. "Lord, save us." It was more than words. It was acknowledgement of risk, faith in themselves, and trust in the invisible threads that held them together. They were about to step into the fire, into the jaws of danger, and every second mattered. As the ridge ended, the team crouched behind rocks, overlooking the village below. The wind carried distant shouts and the glint of muzzle flashes from sentries. Mason gave the signal eyes meeting each of his men, a silent pact of survival and brotherhood. The operation was about to begin. Every SEAL understood. Tonight, they faced death. But together, they would fight, adapt, and survive. And perhaps, just perhaps, some unseen hand or sniper in the rocks would intervene. The darkness was alive with threats, the air heavy with tension, yet a strange calm settled over them. One last deep breath, one final check, and then forward into the unknown. The ridge ended abruptly, dropping sharply into a narrow valley that led directly toward the militant-held village. Moonlight cast eerie shadows, bouncing off jagged rocks and dirt paths, creating illusions of movement where there were none. SEAL Team Alpha crouched behind a jagged boulder, rifles raised, scanning the terrain. Every nerve in their bodies screamed alert. The silence of the night was deceptive. Somewhere ahead, danger waited, and the slightest misstep could ignite chaos. Lieutenant Mason's gloved hand tapped Harris's shoulder. "We move in pairs. Cover each other, eyes sharp. Every sound counts." Harris gave a curt nod, already calculating angles and fields of fire. The rest of the team mirrored the motion, muscles coiled, senses sharpened to the environment. Even the softest breeze brushing across their skin was noticed, analyzed, and catalogued. The first step into the open was calculated. One by one, the SEALs advanced, low and silent, rifles cradled, optics adjusted for low-light combat. Every crackling leaf or shifting stone made them freeze, hearts hammering in synchronized rhythm. They had trained for ambushes countless times, but this was different. The danger was real. Death tangible, unforgiving. Halfway down the narrow path, a distant flicker of light caught Mason's eye. He signaled the team to halt. Shadows moved below enemy scouts, patrolling the outer perimeter. Harris squinted through his binoculars, counting 4 armed men. "They've got patrols." "We'll need to wait for rotation," he whispered. Mason's jaw tightened. Time was critical, yet patience was survival. They settled into concealment, blending with the rocks and sparse shrubbery. Reed, the communications specialist, scanned for signals, ensuring that their comms were silent but functional. Every operator was aware of the enemy's proximity, the wind direction, and the terrain's treacherous slopes. Even the smallest mistake, a misplaced step, a snapped twig could expose them to bullets. Minutes dragged, the tension becoming a living thing. Sweat trickled down Harris's temple, despite the cool mountain air. The slightest noise drew his attention instantly. Mason watched his team, reading their micro-expressions. Eyes wide, muscles tight, barely restrained adrenaline. They were hunters and prey, shadows in the dark, poised to strike, but also ready to be struck. Then it happened. A snap of a branch too loud, too deliberate. Harris froze mid-breath. Mason raised a hand. Instantly, every SEAL dropped lower, blending with the rocky terrain. The enemy patrol had noticed. Lights flicked, shadows shifted, and the faint glint of rifles appeared in the distance. Gunfire erupted, sudden and violent. Bullets ricocheted off rocks, kicking up sparks and debris. The night was alive with the smell of gunpowder and the sound of controlled chaos. Mason barked orders. "Return fire. Harris, cover their flank." "Move!" The team responded instantly. Years of synchronized training took over panic. Suppressive fire, flanking movements, and hand signals dictated the chaos. Corporal Jenkins laid down a covering line, returning fire with precision. Each shot was deliberate, calculated, lethal. Somewhere above, shadows loomed, threatening. The first SEAL to move, Private Daniels, rolled to the next rock, narrowly avoiding a bullet that struck the stone where he had just crouched. Sparks flew, dust coated his face, and adrenaline surged through his veins. He returned fire, heart pounding like a war drum. Mason advanced with Harris, clearing their path while Reed relayed positions and called for silent signals from the extraction team, just in case the firefight escalated beyond control. The enemy had them trapped in a small ravine, the rocks, forming natural corridors that could easily turn into kill zones. Bullets whipped past with terrifying speed. Each SEAL knew instinctively. One misstep and they could be pinned, surrounded, or worse. Harris ducked behind a boulder, his face grim. They're setting crossfire. Watch the ridge. Suddenly, a grenade exploded near Daniels, throwing him against the rocks. Dust and smoke blinded him temporarily, pain searing through his leg. Mason's voice cut through the chaos. Move! Cover him. Without hesitation, Harris advanced, dragging Daniels into a safer position, ignoring the bullets that pinged around him. Every movement was a calculated risk, balancing life and death on a razor's edge. Amid the chaos, the SEALs began to notice a subtle shift in the battle. Enemy fire was precise but slow, almost hesitant, as if their morale wavered. Harris spotted it first. A sniper glint, just a faint reflection, disappearing behind a jagged rock above the village. He pointed it out to Mason, who immediately recalculated their options. Could be a threat or could be a friend. Mason muttered. The firefight intensified as the team fought their way down the ridge. Every SEAL relied on muscle memory and instinct, moving as a single organism rather than individuals. Gunfire echoed off rocks, dust clouds obscured vision, and the acrid smell of smoke filled their nostrils. Yet amid the chaos, their training shone. Every movement, every shot, every suppressed breath counted. Private Daniels groaned, clutching his leg. Harris offered a brief nod. "We don't leave anyone behind," he muttered, dragging him behind cover. Mason coordinated suppression and advance simultaneously, his mind calculating probabilities at lightning speed. The terrain favored the defenders, but the SEALs' experience and discipline turned it into a deadly dance of attack and evasion. Time seemed both suspended and accelerated. Seconds stretched into eternity, yet the firefight surged with relentless intensity. Every shot fired could be the difference between life and death. The SEALs advanced carefully, returning fire, using alders for cover, and communicating through subtle hand signals. Noise was deadly, but silence was impossible in the chaos of combat. Then, a series of shots rang out from above the crack of precision rifles. Enemy leaders fell, one by one. Mason's team barely had time to register the impact before realizing the tide was shifting. Somewhere above the ridge, unseen, a sniper was taking out key targets with uncanny accuracy. Harris whispered, disbelief and relief mingling. "Someone's covering us silently." The SEALs pressed forward, now with a chance. They moved quickly, covering each other, pushing through the remaining threats with renewed determination. The sniper continued picking off enemies with surgical precision, clearing a path that otherwise would have been impossible. Mason glanced up briefly, eyes scanning the jagged rocks, but the shooter remained invisible, a phantom among the shadows. Sweat, dust, and blood coated their faces. The adrenaline burn in their muscles was intense, but the team pushed on, adapting to each twist of danger. Explosions from scattered grenades and return fire punctuated the night. The SEALs, driven by instinct and brotherhood, moved like a single lethal entity. The enemy was powerful, but the discipline, coordination, and sudden unseen support were tipping the scales. By the time they reached the lower valley, the firefight had shifted into a methodical, tense skirmish. Some enemies had retreated, others were isolated and vulnerable. The team moved silently now, covering wounded comrades, consolidating positions, and preparing for the next phase of the mission. The first real taste of battle had tested their nerves, their training, and their courage. Mason gathered the team briefly behind a large boulder. Harris assessed Daniel's wound. It was bad, but not fatal. "We keep moving," Mason said, his voice steady despite the pounding adrenaline. "The village is close. Eyes sharp. One more push and we reach the objective. Watch for crossfire. Watch for ambushes. Watch each other. Stay alive." The SEALs exchanged determined glances. Fear had not vanished, but it had been tempered into focus. Each knew that the next steps would bring them closer to the heart of danger. Yet the sniper above, the unseen ally, had changed the calculus. They had been moments from annihilation, and now, against staggering odds, survival seemed possible. The valley narrowed, shadows lengthened, and the village loomed ahead. A labyrinth of danger, hostile and alive. Every step was measured. Every glance swept for movement. Every heartbeat was synchronized to the rhythm of the mission. The SEALs pressed on, moving silently, swiftly, and deliberately, understanding that the next moments could define life or death. And somewhere above, hidden in the rocks, the sniper waited, unseen but omnipresent, threading death for death, shaping the battlefield in ways the SEALs had yet to fully comprehend. The infiltration had begun. The fight for survival had begun. And the night, dark and merciless, had only just started to reveal its teeth. The valley opened into a rocky corridor leading directly into the village. Every footstep was calculated, every movement deliberate. Moonlight revealed rough terrain littered with jagged stones, low walls, and the faint shimmer of movement enemy. Patrols on alert. The SEALs advanced cautiously, eyes scanning shadows, rifles cradled, fingers poised on triggers. Adrenaline surged through every fiber of their being. They had survived the initial ambush, but now the true danger awaited. Lieutenant Mason motioned for the team to split into 2 tactical units, each covering the other. Harris and Daniels moved to the left, securing a natural ridge overlooking the village entrance. Jenkins and Davis advanced right, using the terrain as cover. Reed stayed central, coordinating communications, silently counting every threat. Each man was hyper-aware. The quiet hum of night felt like a predator circling its prey. Suddenly, a flash of movement caught Mason's eye. A guard had spotted them, or at least suspected movement. The enemy fired a burst of automatic rounds. Mason dove behind a boulder as bullets ricocheted around him. Sparks flew, dust coated his face, and his pulse accelerated to a maddening tempo. The SEALs returned fire immediately, suppressive and precise. Every shot was a calculated gamble, each one potentially saving a life or drawing fatal attention. Harris glanced back to see Daniels clutching his leg, blood seeping through his gloves. Without hesitation, Harris lunged to drag him behind cover. Mason covered them, firing in short controlled bursts at advancing enemy forces. The valley had become a deadly funnel. Rocks created natural barriers, but they also created kill zones. The SEALs were acutely aware. A single misstep could mean instant death. Enemy forces, realizing the initial ambush had failed, regrouped quickly. They had fortified positions within the village, armed with automatic rifles and grenades. One grenade landed perilously close to Daniels. Harris kicked it aside, and it exploded against the stone, spraying shrapnel harmlessly into the air. The SEALs knew they had seconds to react, or lives would be lost. Amid the chaos, Mason saw movement above the rocks. A faint glint caught his eye, just for a moment, a sniper's scope reflecting moonlight. He didn't hesitate. They're being covered. He shouted, though the SEALs could barely hear him over the gunfire. Each enemy leader fell silently, one after another, with bullets that seemed to come from nowhere. The unseen sniper was saving them, threading death for death with surgical precision. As SEALs continued their advance, using every inch of cover, bullets whizzed past, kicking up dust and stone. The night was filled with gunfire, shouted commands, and the occasional metallic clang of ricochets. Jenkins provided cover fire while Davis moved forward, suppressing the closest enemy posts. Each man relied on instinct, muscle memory, and trust in his brothers. Time stretched and contracted in a maddening rhythm. Seconds felt like hours, yet every heartbeat was counted. Daniels groaned in pain, clenching his teeth against the sting in his leg. Harris whispered, "Hold on, we're not leaving you here." He lifted Daniels onto his back, moving with the precision and speed only a SEAL could manage under such fire. Mason covered them, returning fire as bullets struck the rocks around him. Every SEAL felt the knife edge of death pressing close, yet they moved with purpose, determined not to falter. From above, the sniper continued their deadly work. Enemy soldiers fell without warning, their positions neutralized with uncanny precision. Mason's eyes scanned the ridge, searching for the invisible shooter. Relief mingled with disbelief. They had been moments from annihilation, yet the tide was slowly turning. The unseen sniper had created a lifeline, a thread of survival through the chaos. The SEALs reached a low wall at the village entrance. Mason peered over, assessing the enemy formation. Bullets pinged against stone walls. Grenades hissed dangerously close. They were exposed, but retreat was not an option. Mason signaled for a coordinated advance. Harris, still carrying Daniels, nodded. The team moved as one, a well-oiled machine of lethal precision. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the ground to their right. Debris rained down, and smoke filled the air. Jenkins screamed as shrapnel grazed his arm. He barely maintained control of his rifle. Mason shouted orders, guiding them through the chaos. Every second was a test of courage, every decision a battle against instinct screaming to flee. But the SEALs pressed on. They entered the village proper, moving through narrow streets and low walls, clearing buildings methodically. Each building presented new threats, ambushes, traps, and hidden shooters. The SEALs communicated silently through hand signals and subtle gestures. Reed relayed enemy positions and critical information, maintaining a fragile connection with command. Every moment was life or death. In the central square, the enemy had fortified positions with machine guns and barricades. The SEALs paused behind cover, hearts pounding, sweat dripping into their eyes. Mason took a deep breath, signaling for Harris and Jenkins to flank left, while he and Davis suppressed right. The team moved with deadly coordination, their training honed into lethal precision. Gunfire erupted again, bullets tearing through stone and wood. Daniels cried out in pain, but Harris kept moving, shielding him while returning fire. Mason's mind was a blur of calculations, angles, trajectories, cover, timing. The SEALs were moments from death, trapped in a kill zone with enemies pressing from every direction. And yet they advanced, step by step, heartbeats synchronized with adrenaline. Then came another series of shots from above, sharp, precise, and deadly. Enemy leaders fell, disoriented and unable to coordinate attacks. Mason glimpsed the glint of a scope reflecting moonlight once more. The sniper remained unseen but omnipresent, a phantom shaping the battlefield. Every bullet from above was a lifeline. Every enemy neutralized a chance to survive. The SEALs pressed forward, clearing buildings, neutralizing threats, and rescuing the first few hostages they encountered. The hostages were terrified, but the SEALs moved with calm authority, guiding them to cover. Each SEAL covered the other, eyes constantly scanning for threats. Smoke and dust choked the air, but training and instinct prevailed. Harris finally found a moment to assess Daniel's leg. Shrapnel had grazed a major artery, but the wound was manageable with pressure and bandaging. He whispered reassurances, applying field dressings while keeping one eye on the street ahead. Mason provided cover fire, suppressing enemy positions. The team's cohesion was flawless, a testament to countless hours of training and shared experience. The firefight reached its peak in the central square. Bullets tore through barricades, smoke obscured vision, and the sound of gunfire was deafening. Every SEAL felt the knife edge of mortality, yet their focus never wavered. The sniper above continued to thin enemy ranks, their unseen presence tilting the odds. Mason's team pushed forward, securing key positions, rescuing hostages, and neutralizing remaining threats. Time blurred. The SEALs moved like shadows, lethal, precise, and coordinated. Enemy fire slowed, then faltered, as their lines were decimated. The unseen sniper had reshaped the battlefield, providing the team with the precious seconds needed to survive and advance. Mason glanced up briefly, eyes searching the jagged rocks above. No figure could be seen, only the results of deadly precision, fallen enemies, and a cleared path. Finally, the immediate threat began to wane. Enemy forces were disoriented, retreating, or eliminated. The SEALs consolidated their positions, checking each other for injuries. Harris and Daniels huddled behind cover, Daniels breathing heavily. But alive. Jenkins tended a grazed arm. Davis reassessed the perimeters. Reed relayed critical information back to command. Mason took a moment to survey the scene. The village was scarred by the firefight, but the team had survived. Lives had been saved, and the mission pressed forward. Yet the emotional toll was heavy. The close brush with death, the wounds sustained, the constant awareness of mortality. Every SEAL understood that moments ago, they had been at the very edge. Somewhere above, the sniper remained hidden. Mason could only guess at their identity. An ally? A local operative? Whatever the case, their deadly intervention had been the difference between annihilation and survival. Harris muttered, "I don't even know who just saved our asses." Mason nodded silently. Some questions had to wait. Survival came first. The night was far from over. The village still held dangers. Hostages still needed extraction, and enemy reinforcements could arrive at any moment. But in this moment, amid smoke, rubble, and adrenaline, SEAL Team Alpha had survived the worst of the battle. They had faced near certain death, adapted, and pressed forward. Every heartbeat was a reminder of fragility, courage, and the thin line between life and death. And above, in the rocks, the unseen sniper waited, patient, precise, lethal, threading death for death, reshaping the battlefield, and giving the SEALs a fighting chance they would never forget. The firefight was only the beginning. The night hung heavy over the village, broken only by the echoes of gunfire and the occasional explosion. Dust and smoke coiled in the narrow streets, obscuring vision and mingling with the metallic scent of blood and sweat. SEAL Team Alpha had survived the initial firefight, but the battle was far from over. Each operator moved with caution, eyes scanning every shadow, nerves taut like bowstrings. Somewhere above, an unseen presence was changing the course of the fight, threading death through enemy lines with cold precision. Lieutenant Mason crouched behind a partially destroyed wall, scanning the rooftops and rocky ridges beyond. The team had fought their way through the village entrance, rescuing the first hostages and neutralizing immediate threats. Yet something had shifted the balance. Enemy forces that should have been overwhelming were faltering. Mason's eyes tracked a glint of light, a momentary reflection of a scope in the jagged rocks above. The sniper was there, and for the first time, he realized how close they had been to annihilation before this invisible hand intervened. Harris, breathing heavily beside him, whispered, "I see it too. Someone's covering us, taking out the key shooters." Mason nodded, barely audible over the gunfire. "Stay sharp. We don't know if they're friend or foe yet. But right now, we owe them our lives." The sniper's presence became immediately apparent as enemy leaders fell in rapid succession. Each shot was deliberate, precise, surgical. The SEALs didn't know the shooter's position, but every bullet cleared a path, neutralized a threat, and gave them precious seconds to move forward. The enemy's confidence crumbled, replaced by confusion and panic. The sniper was unseen, a phantom threading through the chaos, invisible yet omnipresent. Mason signaled for the team to advance cautiously. The village streets were littered with debris, overturned carts, and rubble from earlier explosions. Bullets still ricocheted off walls, but the rhythm had changed. Suppressive fire from the sniper above allowed the SEALs to maneuver, clearing corners and securing buildings. Harris and Daniels moved together, supporting each other, their movements fluid despite injuries. Each step forward was both triumph and gamble, every glance a reminder that death lurked just beyond vision. Reed, the communications specialist, kept a meticulous record of enemy positions and movements, coordinating with Mason to prevent exposure. "We've got eyes on multiple enemy clusters," he whispered into the comms. "Crossfire is breaking. Sniper above. They're changing. The tide." Mason gave a subtle nod, signaling Jenkins and Davis to flank left and right. Each man understood the silent instructions. Years of training and trust made communication instantaneous. The sniper continued their deadly intervention. High above, a lone figure lay prone against the jagged rocks, eyes narrowed through a high-powered scope. One by one, enemy shooters fell. Each round was precise, calculated, and fatal. The SEALs could not see the sniper, could not even hear them over the chaos, yet they could feel the invisible hand guiding their survival. It was as if fate had manifested in the form of a single, unseen warrior. Mason led the team through a narrow alley, using the buildings for cover. Every shadow, every door, every window was a potential threat. The sniper's bullets picked off key targets, allowing the SEALs to move with a fraction of the danger they had faced moments ago. Harris whispered urgently to Daniels, "Hold steady. Every shot from above counts. Don't expose yourself unnecessarily." Daniels nodded, grimacing from the pain in his leg, but understanding instinctively. Suddenly, a squad of enemy soldiers appeared at a street corner, rifles raised, unaware of the sniper above. Before they could react, precise shots rang out. 3 fell instantly. Others scrambled for cover, panic in their eyes. Mason signaled for the SEALs to advance. The battlefield had shifted. What was once a deadly stalemate now offered a fragile advantage. The team pressed forward, moving building to building, clearing interiors methodically. Each room contained threats-armed insurgents, traps, and hidden shooters, but the sniper above continued to provide crucial support. Mason couldn't see them, couldn't even identify their origin, but he knew their presence was the difference between life and death. He motioned to Harris, Jenkins, and Davis, "Cover the exits. Move quietly. Trust your training. Trust them." The SEALs moved like shadows, lethal and precise. They neutralized threats efficiently, keeping hostages protected in the center of the group. Every step was calculated. Bullets kicked up dust and sparks, yet their movements were synchronized. Every SEAL relied not only on instinct, but on the invisible support above. The sniper's presence was unspoken reassurance, survival. was possible even in the face of overwhelming odds. Mason glanced upward again, scanning the jagged ridges. Nothing. No movement. No sound. Only the distant impact of bullets and the bodies of enemies who had once threatened their lives. Whoever the sniper was, they were meticulous, patient, and lethal, a force of nature, hidden within the rocks. The firefight reached a fevered pitch as the SEALs entered the village square. Enemy fighters tried to regroup, but the sniper's rounds tore through command positions, leaving them disoriented and vulnerable. Mason signaled for flanking movements, directing his team with precision. Harris secured Daniels, Jenkins suppressed the remaining shooters, and Davis moved to cover the rear. Every man was in constant motion, yet perfectly coordinated. Amid the chaos, Mason couldn't help but reflect on the near-impossible odds they had just overcome. Moments ago, death had been a shadow at every corner, a predator waiting to strike. Now, because of the unseen sniper, they were not only surviving, but gaining ground. Sweat and blood coated their faces. Adrenaline burned their muscles. Yet the team moved with lethal purpose. Reed kept a careful watch on communications. Enemy. Movement is collapsing. Sniper above. They're cleaning up the outer positions. You've got a window to advance to the extraction point. Mason gave a sharp nod. Time was still critical, but for the first time, they could plan with a measure of confidence. The SEALs pressed forward, moving through narrow streets littered with debris, shattered doors, and the bodies of fallen enemies. The sniper above continued to pick off targets with surgical precision, allowing the team to advance with minimal exposure. Harris and Daniels navigated the terrain carefully, every step measured, every glance calculated. The invisible presence above was more than a tactical advantage, it was salvation. Then, a sudden explosion rocked the street to their right, throwing dust and shrapnel into the air. Mason instinctively shielded his men, returning fire to suppress enemy reinforcements. Harris adjusted Daniel's bandages while keeping one eye on the advancing threat. The sniper's bullets continued to fall, eliminating targets with terrifying precision. The SEALs moved as one unit, relying on each other and the unseen guardian above. The team finally reached a high vantage point within the village, allowing them to assess the remaining threats. Enemy forces were disorganized, some retreating, others pinned by the sniper's fire. Mason signaled a halt. For the first time, he allowed himself a brief moment to breathe, to recognize the impact of the hidden sniper. They had turned the tide of battle, threading death through enemy ranks with invisible hands. Harris whispered, awe in his voice, "Whoever that is, they just saved every one of us. I don't even know how to thank them." Mason nodded silently. Gratitude mixed with disbelief, yet the sniper's identity remained a mystery. The SEALs had survived near certain death, thanks to an unseen, lethal presence that had altered the battlefield with precision and patience. The night continued, but the balance had shifted. Enemy forces were collapsing, hostages were secured, and the SEALs had gained the momentum they desperately needed. The sniper above remained hidden, a ghost in the rocks, a silent protector whose skill and timing had saved lives. Mason gathered his team, emphasizing the importance of continued vigilance. The battle was not over, but the near-impossible odds had been dramatically improved. Every SEAL felt a deep, unspoken gratitude toward the unseen sniper. Lives had been spared, the mission advanced, and the team had survived the deadliest moments of the firefight. The experience left an indelible mark. The terrifying awareness of mortality and the miraculous intervention of a hidden, lethal hand. As the team prepared to press further into the village, Mason glanced toward the jagged rocks above, eyes scanning for the sniper's glint. Nothing. No movement. Only silence. And yet, the presence was undeniable. Every fallen enemy, every cleared path, and every breath of survival was a testament to their deadly skill. In that moment, the SEALs understood the power of unseen allies and the delicate balance between life and death. The snipers' bullets had reshaped the battlefield, providing the edge they needed to continue the mission. The night had been transformed from near catastrophe into a battle they could control, at least for now. Mason raised his hand, signaling. The team forward. The mission pressed on, adrenaline surging, muscles aching, hearts still hammering. Every man was alive, every life saved by skill, courage, and the unseen sniper threading death with deadly precision. The shadows of the rocks held their savior, and the SEALs moved onward, ever aware that survival was still a fragile, fleeting gift. The village lay partially in ruin, shadows dancing across broken walls and debris-strewn streets. Smoke spiraled from overturned carts and shattered roofs, the acrid scent of gunpowder mingling with the metallic tong of blood. SEAL Team Alpha crouched behind the remnants of a collapsed building, chest heaving, eyes scanning the streets ahead. Moments ago, they had been pinned, almost annihilated. Now, with enemy morale crumbling and the unseen sniper clearing the path, the tide of battle had begun to turn. Survival was no longer just hope, it was tangible, but precarious. Lieutenant Mason surveyed the streets through night vision optics. Enemy forces were disorganized, scattered across the village, attempting to regroup. Bullets still ricocheted around them, but panic was creeping into their ranks. Mason gestured for the team to advance, move methodically. Watch each other. Cover fire suppresses their regrouping. We push forward, clearing structures as we go. Harris, carrying Daniels' injured leg, nodded sharply, adjusting his grip as the wounded man groaned in pain. Each step was deliberate, calculated, and deadly serious. The sniper above remained unseen, yet their presence was undeniable. Enemy leaders continued to fall, key positions neutralized with uncanny precision. Mason didn't know if the shooter was allied or a local operative, but it no longer mattered. Every round fired from above allowed his team to maneuver, regroup, and gain momentum. The SEALs moved like shadows, lethal and synchronized, exploiting the advantage created by the sunlight. Invisible hand threading death through enemy lines. Jenkins and Davis flanked to the right, moving quickly through narrow alleys, eliminating small pockets of resistance. Each building they cleared revealed new threats: hidden shooters, armed civilians, coerced into fighting, and booby traps. But the sniper's fire ensured that the most lethal threats were neutralized before they could react. Mason moved centrally, Harris and Daniels to his left, Reed maintaining comms and coordinating the team's movements. The battlefield was a chaotic puzzle, and every piece had to fit perfectly. Time seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously. Each second brought a torrent of gunfire, explosions, and shouted commands, yet every movement of the SEALs was deliberate, almost choreographed. Mason assessed the battlefield constantly, anticipating enemy reactions and redirecting his team accordingly. Harris adjusted Daniel's bandage, glancing briefly at Mason, who signaled him to continue moving forward. Every moment was life or death, and every breath could be their last. From above, the sniper continued their surgical elimination of high-value targets. One by one, enemy fighters fell before they could organize an effective defense. Mason could feel the difference immediately: suppressed enemy fire, gaps in their formation, and panicked movements that created opportunities for advance. Push forward, Mason commanded softly but firmly. We clear this village, save the hostages, and keep moving. Eyes sharp, brothers? The SEALs pressed deeper into the village center, moving through narrow streets littered with debris, overturned furniture, and the remnants of battle. Every doorway, window, and shadow was a potential threat, but the sniper above allowed them to maneuver with calculated confidence. Bullets kicked up dust and sparks, yet the team's coordination never faltered. Muscle memory, training, and trust guided their every move. Harris paused to scan a side alley where movement suggested an enemy ambush. He whispered, "We've got two hiding in that doorway. Cover me." Mason provided suppressive fire as Harris approached the threat, neutralizing the combatants with swift, precise shots. Daniels, grimacing from his leg injury, leaned against a wall, rifle ready, covering Harris. The sniper above eliminated an enemy, attempting to flank from the rooftop, allowing Harris to retreat safely. The SEALs' momentum continued to build. Each successful engagement fueled their determination, but fatigue, adrenaline, and pain pressed heavily against them. Sweat-stung eyes, muscles burned from constant tension, and the sounds of battle gunfire, screams, and explosions threatened to overwhelm. Yet the team moved as one, coordinated and lethal. Every fallen enemy, every cleared street, every rescued hostage reinforced their advantage. Mason spotted a group of hostiles attempting to regroup near the village square. He signaled Jenkins and Davis to flank left and right, while he and Harris suppressed from their current position. Reed relayed enemy locations, providing the team with situational awareness that allowed them to strike decisively. The sniper above continued to neutralize threats that would have otherwise pinned them down. The unseen shooter had shifted the odds, turning near-certain death into a calculated battle of attrition. Grenades rolled down the street from a hidden enemy position. Mason ducked instinctively, barking orders as smoke and shrapnel erupted around them. Jenkins and Davis advanced, firing with precision, eliminating threats before they could fully react. Harris carried Daniels through the chaos, shielding him with his own body when necessary. The sniper above continued their silent intervention, removing the most lethal threats with deadly accuracy. Every building cleared, every enemy neutralized, and every hostage secured strengthened the SEALs' control over the battlefield. Yet Mason knew the fight was not over. Reinforcements could arrive, traps might still be active, and the village remained a deadly maze. He signaled a brief halt behind cover to reassess the situation, breathing heavily but alert. "We push forward cautiously," he whispered. "The sniper above. We rely on them, but we stay vigilant. Eyes open, everyone." From the rooftops and ridges above, the sniper continued to shape the battlefield. Every bullet fired removed a critical threat. Enemy leaders, machine gunners, and sharpshooters who had the potential to decimate the SEALs. Mason realized that without this invisible ally, the mission could have ended in disaster. The sniper's skill was undeniable, a ghost threading death through the enemy ranks with meticulous precision. The SEALs pressed forward again, clearing streets, securing hostages, and consolidating positions. Harris kept Daniels close, while Mason coordinated flanking movements with Jenkins and Davis. Reed maintained constant situational awareness, ensuring that the team could exploit every advantage. Bullets ricocheted off stone walls, dust and debris obscured vision, but the SEALs moved like a single lethal organism. Each man relied on instinct, training, and trust in both his team and the unseen sniper above. As they approached the village center, enemy forces were increasingly disorganized. Some fled, others attempted desperate resistance, but the sniper above continued to pick off key targets with deadly precision. Mason signaled for the team to advance through the central square, maintaining tight coordination and suppressive fire. Every movement was calculated, every shot deliberate. They were turning the tide. Harris finally had a moment to check Daniel's leg thoroughly. The wound was stable, bandaged sufficiently to continue, and Daniels nodded, understanding that the fight was far from over. Mason moved beside them, scanning rooftops and alleys for threats. The sniper above continued to intervene silently, reshaping the battlefield with unseen hands. Each fallen enemy was a lifeline, each cleared street a corridor to survival. The SEALs reached a vantage point overlooking the remaining enemy stronghold. Mason signaled a coordinated assault. Jenkins and Davis moved to flank. Harris provided cover, and Reed relayed information about enemy positions. The sniper above picked off key threats with precise timing, ensuring that the SEALs could advance with minimal exposure. Momentum was now fully in their favor. Gunfire continued, but it was no longer overwhelming. Enemy morale had collapsed, disorganization rampant. Mason knew that if they continued with disciplined precision, the mission could succeed. The unseen sniper above had created the critical opportunity. They now needed to seize it. Every step, every movement, every shot was decisive. Survival, which had once seemed fragile, was now achievable. Finally, after clearing the last key positions, Mason allowed a brief pause. The SEALs gathered behind cover, catching their breath. Daniels, grimacing but alive, leaned heavily on Harris. Jenkins and Davis wiped sweat and dust from their faces. Reed checked communications one last time, confirming the enemy had no coordinated counterattack. The tide had indeed turned. Mason raised his hand, signaling the team forward. The sniper above remained unseen, a phantom among the rocks, threading death with deadly precision, shaping the battlefield, and granting the SEALs the advantage they desperately needed. The mission pressed forward, hostages safe for now, enemy forces crumbling, and every SEAL alive to see the difference made by the hidden hand of fate. The night was far from over, but the momentum had shifted decisively. SEAL Team Alpha had turned near-certain death into opportunity, relying on skill, coordination, and the lethal intervention of an unseen ally. Every heartbeat reminded them of how close they had come to annihilation, and how fragile survival could be, but also how determination, discipline, and a single unseen sniper could thread life through chaos. The village lay eerily silent in the aftermath of the firefight. Smoke still curled from smoldering debris, the acrid tang of gunpowder lingering in the crisp night air. Broken walls, overturned carts, and shattered doors painted a chaotic picture of destruction. SEAL Team Alpha moved cautiously through the streets, each step measured, every glance sweeping for threats that might still linger. The firefight had ended, but the wariness in their eyes suggested survival didn't end when the last bullet was fired. Lieutenant Mason surveyed the battlefield from the rubble of a partially destroyed building. Dust and sweat coated his face. Muscles screamed in protest, and adrenaline still thumped in his chest. Around him, the team regrouped. Harris attending to Daniel's leg injury, Jenkins checking his rifle and bandages, Davis scanning rooftops and alleyways, Reed maintaining secure communications with command. Every man bore the physical and emotional scars of combat minor wounds, bruised pride, and the weight of having faced near death. Daniels shifted uncomfortably on Harris' shoulder, grimacing but alert. "Thought we were done for back there," he muttered, voice strained. Harris offered a short nod. "We all did, but we're alive. That's what counts." Daniels swallowed, wincing at the pain, yet managed a faint, relieved smile. Every operator understood that small moments of reprieve were rare, fragile, and precious. The team had sustained injuries, but had avoided fatal casualties, a miracle that owed much to the unseen sniper who had dominated the battlefield from the ridges above. Mason's mind wandered briefly to that invisible figure. Who were they? An ally? A local operative? Or a SEAL embedded elsewhere? The thought lingered, unanswered, as he focused on consolidating the team and assessing the immediate operational needs. Harris carefully removed Daniel's field dressing to inspect the wound. The shrapnel had grazed a major artery, but was stabilized sufficiently for movement. Harris applied pressure and wrapped the leg with reinforced bandaging. "You'll need full medical attention soon," he said softly. Daniels nodded, still catching his breath. The SEALs were trained to handle injuries in combat conditions, but the reality of blood, pain, and exhaustion never ceased to impress the limits of human endurance. Mason gathered the team behind the partial wall, issuing calm, deliberate instructions. Secure the hostages. Reinforce defensive positions. Check for remaining threats. We've survived the worst, but the mission isn't over. Stay alert. Every SEAL nodded. Even in the relief of survival, discipline was paramount. Complacency was deadly. Every second required awareness. Every glance could prevent disaster. Reed monitored communications, confirming that no reinforcements were detected from the enemy side. The village's enemy command structure had collapsed under the sniper's precision and the SEALs' relentless clearing operations. Mason allowed himself a brief mental exhale, recognizing the rare balance between chaos and control. The tide had been decisively turned, but each man's exhaustion and stress was palpable. Jenkins checked the perimeter of the village, rifle at the ready. His arm wore a shallow graze from earlier fire. He brushed the blood aside, grimacing, then adjusted his gear. "Enemy presence is minimal," he reported quietly. Mason nodded, appreciating the concise update. Each SEAL had moved like a shadow through the streets, their coordination flawless, their training tested to the extreme. Yet even success carried the weight of what they had endured. The hostages, huddled behind a collapsed wall, stared with wide, fearful eyes. The SEALs approached slowly, hands raised in reassurance. Mason knelt, offering calm words. "You're safe now. Follow us, stay close, and we'll get you out." The hostages' relief was palpable, tears mingling with dirt and grime on their faces. Even amid victory, the human cost of battle was impossible to ignore. Harris continued tending to Daniels, checking the bandaging and reassuring him. "We made it this far. Keep moving when we head to extraction." Daniels nodded, voice still weak but resolute. Every man felt the exhaustion pressing on his body, yet adrenaline and survival instinct kept them upright, alert, and moving forward. Each heartbeat was a reminder of how close death had come and how fragile life remained. Mason walked slowly among his team, offering brief words of acknowledgement. "We survived, thanks to each other, and someone up there," he said quietly, glancing toward the jagged ridges above the village. The sniper remained unseen, their identity a mystery, yet their influence undeniable. Every fallen enemy, every cleared path, every saved life bore the mark of the invisible intervention that had turned near-certain death into survival. Jenkins exhaled heavily, surveying the battlefield. "I can't believe we made it without losing anyone fatal." Mason nodded solemnly. "We've been lucky, yes, but luck alone doesn't save lives. Skill, discipline, and trust did. And someone up there was covering us in ways we didn't see." Each SEAL felt a quiet, almost reverent gratitude. The invisible sniper had become the ghost of their survival, threading life through the chaos with deadly precision. Reed adjusted his communications gear, relaying updated positions to command. "All hostiles neutralized," he reported. "Extraction team is en route." Mason gave a nod of approval, signaling the team to prepare for movement. Every SEAL checked their gear, secured weapons, and assessed injuries. The adrenaline had worn down slightly, replaced by the physical aches and mental weight of surviving a near-impossible battle. The team regrouped, forming a tight unit around the hostages. Mason led the way through the narrow streets, alert to every possible ambush, every trap, every shadow. Harris supported Daniels carefully, ensuring that the injured man could move without further harm. Jenkins and Davis maintained flanking positions, scanning rooftops and alleyways for any remaining threats. Reed maintained communication with command and extraction teams, coordinating their route, even as they moved, a memory of moments when death had seemed imminent pressed heavily on their minds. Every missed heartbeat, every ricochet that had grazed stone near them, every enemy bullet that had whistled past, these were the thin threads separating life from death. The unseen sniper had transformed those threads into a lifeline, a silent guardian threading survival into chaos. Finally, the SEALs reached the extraction point, a small clearing near the village outskirts. The terrain allowed a temporary defensive perimeter while the extraction team prepared to arrive. Mason positioned his team strategically, covering every approach, every potential threat. Harris continued attending to Daniels, ensuring the bandaging remained secure and the wound stabilized. Jenkins and Davis took up overwatch positions, vigilant and ready. Reed kept lines open with command and extraction teams. Mason allowed himself a brief moment to reflect. The night had tested them beyond measure. They had faced near-certain death, fought with precision and courage, and survived. Yet the invisible sniper remained a mystery, a ghostly force that had reshaped the battlefield, providing the SEALs with the margin of survival they desperately needed. Gratitude mingled with awe. Survival had never felt so fragile, so miraculous. SEALs checked their weapons one final time, ensuring readiness for any last-minute threats. The hostages remained huddled safely, guided quietly by Harris and Mason. Every man understood the significance of what had been survived. Moments ago, death had been tangible, omnipresent, and unrelenting. Now, though danger remained, survival was real, solid, and within their grasp. A distant hum indicated the extraction team's approach. Mason signaled for the team to hold formation, maintaining vigilance until the moment of boarding. Harris kept Daniels steady, Jenkins and Davis covering the perimeter, Reed coordinating every movement. The sniper above, though unseen, had secured the SEAL's path to this critical moment. Every step toward extraction was a victory, every breath a gift. As the extraction vehicles drew near, Mason allowed a moment of silent acknowledgement. The SEALs had turned near-certain death into survival, threading precision, courage, and discipline through chaos. And the unseen sniper, whoever they were, had become the invisible hand of Providence guiding them through the deadliest moments of the night. With the hostages secured and the team ready, Mason signaled forward. Every SEAL moved as one, coordinated, disciplined, and aware of every shadow and echo. A battlefield behind them was scarred, yet the team survived. Lives had been saved, enemies neutralized, and the balance had been irrevocably shifted. Every heartbeat was a testament to courage, skill, and the mysterious intervention that had made survival possible. Even as they climbed into the extraction vehicles, Mason glanced toward the jagged ridges above the village. No figure could be seen. Only the evidence of precision, patience, and lethal skill remained. Fallen enemies, cleared paths, and the SEALs alive to continue their mission. Gratitude and awe mingled in his chest. The night would be remembered, not just for the firefight, but for the invisible force that had safeguarded them when all seemed lost. The SEALs settled into the vehicles, muscles aching, hearts still racing. Yet the weight of survival pressed less heavily now. The mission had endured, the hostages were safe, and the shadowy presence above had left its mark threading life through the chaos, leaving an indelible memory of the thin line between death and survival. The journey back to base would be quiet, reflective, and heavy with gratitude. The SEALs had survived near impossible odds, and every step forward was proof of courage, skill, and the unseen hand that had intervened. The aftermath of battle was a mixture of relief, exhaustion, and the lingering knowledge that survival had come by a razor-thin margin. The extraction vehicles moved silently along the rugged path leading away from the village. The night air was cool, but heavy with tension, the adrenaline of combat still pulsing through SEAL Team Alpha's veins. Inside the vehicles, the team sat in tense silence, each man nursing injuries, adjusting gear, and replaying the firefight in his mind. Every creak of the vehicle, every shift in the terrain reminded them that danger had never fully passed. Yet one thought lingered above all: the unseen sniper whose intervention had saved them from near-certain death. Lieutenant Mason leaned back, his eyes scanning the dark horizon. "We survived because someone out there was covering our backs," he muttered, voice low but resolute. Harris adjusted Daniel's bandaging once more, glancing at Mason. "We owe them everything," he said quietly. Daniels, still pale from his injury but alert, nodded in agreement. Each SEAL understood the weight of that statement. Lives had been spared by someone operating in the shadows, unseen but deadly accurate. Reed tapped on his communications pad, reviewing the information logged during the firefight. "I've cross-referenced the sniper shots with known assets in the area," he said. Mason's eyes narrowed. "Any leads?" Reed hesitated, then continued. "There's a pattern: someone with training, skill, and precision matching a SEAL-level operative. But no known friendly positions were in the vicinity until I dug deeper." Mason's pulse quickened. "Go on." Reed took a deep breath, his fingers flying over the controls. "It looks like an embedded operative officially off the grid. Someone who's been in the region, monitoring enemy movements. Their tactics, marksmanship, and timing are textbook Navy SEAL. But the patching and comms avoidance suggest they weren't officially deployed for this mission. Yet every high-value target they hit aligns perfectly with our positions." The team exchanged glances, disbelief and curiosity flickering across their faces. Mason finally spoke, voice measured. "So, someone was out there saving our lives, but we had no contact. No way to coordinate. Completely autonomous." Harris muttered, awe and skepticism mixed in his tone. "And you're telling us they did this? All alone, with no comms, at the exact moment we needed it most?" Mason nodded slowly. "Exactly. Whoever they are, they were lethal, precise, and completely invisible to the enemy, and to us." The vehicles crested a hill, and in the moonlight, Mason spotted movement on a ridge, overlooking the valley they had just left. A lone figure, prone against jagged rocks, glinted briefly in the pale moonlight. Mason froze, heart racing. He signaled silently for the team to observe. The figure remained still, rifle extended, scope trained on the distant horizon. It was unmistakable, the sniper. Their presence was real, tangible, and now visible for the first time. The extraction vehicle slowed. Mason gestured for the team to disembark carefully. Each SEAL moved with caution, eyes scanning the ridge. Harris steadied Daniels, whispering, "Stay behind me. Whatever happens, stay low." The team advanced, quietly approaching the sniper's position. The tension was palpable. After months of operations, the sudden unveiling of a near-mythical ally sent shivers through every man. As they neared the ridge, Mason called out, voice steady but cautious, "Identify yourself. You saved our lives." The sniper shifted slightly, lifting the hood of a dark jacket. A faint smile appeared beneath a rugged, familiar face. Mason froze. His mind raced. Recognition dawned slowly. "Sergeant Callahan?" The sniper nodded, lowering the rifle slightly. "In the flesh," he said, tone calm, controlled. "You guys were moments from death. I couldn't risk exposure until you were clear." The team's disbelief melted into awe. Callahan, a legendary SEAL thought to be operating in a covert theater for months, had single-handedly covered the entire firefight from an unseen vantage. Every critical shot, every neutralized enemy leader, every cleared corridor was the work of a solitary, unparalleled sniper. Mason shook his head, speechless for a moment. Harris finally muttered, "I don't even know what to say." Callahan smiled faintly. "No need. You're alive. That's enough." Daniels, still leaning on Harris, managed a weak grin. "You're a ghost, and you saved my life." Callahan's expression softened. "You all did the hard work. I just made sure the odds were slightly in your favor." Mason stepped closer, tone measured but intense. "We've trained for years, faced impossible odds. But without you, half of us wouldn't have made it. How did you know when and where to strike?" Callahan's gaze remained steady, eyes scanning the moonlit valley. "I've been monitoring the region for months. I had intel on enemy positions, movement patterns, and high-value targets. I couldn't risk radio comes in. Would have blown my cover and endangered the mission. I only intervened when I knew you were in immediate danger. Timing was everything. One wrong second. You wouldn't be here talking to me now?" Harris exhaled slowly, the magnitude of the revelation sinking in. "So all this, the sniper, the timing, it was you? The ghost we couldn't see, the guardian above?" Callahan shrugged slightly. "Call it what you want. I had a job. You were the priority. Every shot had to count. Every target had to be neutralized without compromise. No margin for error." Mason's team exchanged quiet glances, respect and awe radiating in unspoken ways. Years of training had honed their skills, but what they had witnessed was a level of precision, courage, and intuition that transcended ordinary combat. Callahan had been the invisible hand threading life through near-certain death, a savior, without recognition until now. The revelation brought a mix of relief and humility. Mason's voice broke the silence, calm but filled with respect. "You saved all of us. Not just with skill, but with judgment, timing. With courage, we can barely comprehend. Thank you, Sergeant Callahan." Callahan nodded, eyes serious but not boastful. "I did my job. That's all it was. You all carried the fight on the ground. I just made sure you had a chance to survive it." The SEALs lingered for a moment, taking in the reality of survival. Every gunshot, every fallen enemy, every step through the village had been influenced by Callahan's unseen presence. The weight of near death, combined with the revelation of their savior, left each man reflective and humbled. Daniels finally whispered, "I owe you my life. We all do." Callahan's reply was simple, "Then live. Don't waste it." The conversation was interrupted by the sound of extraction vehicles approaching. Mason signaled the team to prepare. Hostages secure and weapons ready. Callahan adjusted his rifle one last time, ensuring no remaining threats lingered. Every shot fired, every movement executed in the previous hours, had saved lives and shifted the battlefield's odds. The SEALs were alive, victorious, and indebted to the unseen sniper who had become real before their eyes. As they boarded the vehicles, Mason turned to Callahan. "Stay with us. We need to debrief, and we need to know you're okay. The team would follow you anywhere." Callahan shook his head slightly, a ghost of a smile on his face. "I have other objectives. My mission isn't over yet, but you survived tonight, and that's enough credit for me." The vehicles rumbled. Along the rugged path, the moonlight illuminating faces marked with exhaustion, relief, and awe. The SEALs settled into silence, each processing the surreal revelation. They had faced moments of death, endured chaos, and survived against impossible odds. And now they knew their survival was owed to one man, a ghost sniper whose skill, courage, and timing had turned the tide of battle. Mason leaned back, eyes closing briefly. "We owe him everything. he whispered, not expecting a reply. Harris nodded, gripping Daniel's shoulder, eyes still on the horizon. Yeah, everything. The team remained quiet, reflective, and resolute. Their journey was not over, but the night had taught them the true meaning of courage, precision, and selfless sacrifice. Callahan, perched briefly on the ridge before fading into the shadows, looked back once. No words were exchanged. The SEALs below understood. He would remain the silent guardian, unseen and unheralded, threading life through chaos. Survival had been forged in his hands, but victory belonged to the team who had pressed forward, endured, and trusted their instincts. The extraction vehicles disappeared into the distance, leaving the moonlit village behind. A battlefield was scarred, but the SEALs were alive. Every man understood the delicate balance between life and death, the razor-thin margin that separated survival from catastrophe. And somewhere above, a solitary sniper remained real, lethal, and now revealed, but still, in many ways, untouchable, threading death for life in the shadows. The night had ended, but the story of survival, courage, and the hidden hand of fate would remain etched in memory forever. The extraction vehicles rumbled over the rugged terrain, carrying SEAL Team Alpha and the rescued hostages away from the devastated village. Moonlight reflected off metal and dirt-streaked faces, illuminating the exhaustion, relief, and lingering adrenaline etched into every man. The sounds of battle gunfire, explosions, screams were now distant echoes, replaced by the low hum of engines and the rhythmic crunch of tires over rock-strewn paths. For the first time since entering the village, the SEALs allowed themselves a moment to breathe, to process what they had endured, and to reflect on the thin line between life and death. Lieutenant Mason sat rigidly, his eyes scanning the dark horizon even as the adrenaline ebbed. His mind replayed every second of the firefight, every corner cleared, every enemy neutralized, every close call. He was a leader trained to think ahead, to anticipate threats, and to manage his team's morale. But even he could not fully process the magnitude of survival tonight. They had faced annihilation in the valley and emerged alive, battered but unbroken, and the unseen sniper now. Revealed had been the difference. Harris checked Daniels, ensuring his leg bandage remained secure, and that the wound hadn't worsened during the extraction. Daniels leaned back against the vehicle wall, pale and exhausted, but managing a faint, grateful smile. I didn't think I'd make it through that, he admitted quietly. Harris responded with a firm, reassuring grip on his shoulder. You made it because we all kept moving and because someone above made sure we could. Daniels nodded slowly, understanding. The words were more than tactical, they were life itself. Jenkins, sprawled slightly with one arm over his rifle, shook his head in disbelief. I can't believe we're all here. No fatal injuries. Everyone survived, mostly because of him. His gaze drifted upward, though the sniper Callahan was already long gone, vanished into the shadows where he had fought unseen. Mason's jaw tightened, a mix of gratitude and awe crossing his face. It wasn't just luck, he said quietly. It was skill, timing, courage, and someone who was willing to thread death into survival for us. Reed monitored comms as the extraction. Team relayed updated coordinates back to base. They're coordinating medevac, debrief, and post-mission support. We're almost home. Mason gave a subtle nod. Good. Everyone's still alert. No matter what happened tonight, the moment we stop thinking, we die. The words hung in the confined vehicle space, a sober reminder that even after surviving near certain death, vigilance remained the SEAL way. Harris glanced at Daniels, voice soft. You feel it too, don't you? That weight? That near-miss feeling? Daniels nodded faintly. Yeah, it's like a shadow on your chest. You know it's gone now, but the memory doesn't leave. Harris exhaled slowly. That's combat, brother. You don't shake it off. You survive it, and you carry it. The seals in the vehicle quietly reflected on the truth in his words. Survival was never free. It was earned in blood, sweat, and precision. Mason replayed the final moments of the firefight, mentally cataloging every detail. The hostages had been secured, enemy positions neutralized, and the village cleared. Yet, the thing that weighed most heavily on him wasn't strategy or execution. It was the unseen sniper who had tilted fate in their favor. Callahan's intervention had been surgical, timely, and utterly lethal. Without him, the SEALs would have been moments from death. With him, they were alive to fight another day. Do you think we'll ever know why he didn't contact us? Jenkins asked, voice low. Mason shook his head slowly. Not fully. He had a mission, and exposure risk would have jeopardized everything. But it's enough that he acted. That's all that matters. Lives were saved, and the mission succeeded. Harris nodded. A ghost among us. Invisible, untouchable, and lethal. That's who we owe our lives to. Daniels shifted uncomfortably, the pain in his leg a stark reminder of mortality. It's weird, surviving all that. Being alive, while so close to death. I keep replaying it. Mason's voice was calm but firm. That's natural. What matters is what you do with it. You survived. You acted. And now you carry the experience forward. You honor the lives saved, including the one who saved you silently from above. As the vehicles descended toward the base, the SEALs reflected on the psychological weight of the mission. Survival had been razor thin. Every step had been guided by skill, instinct, and unseen assistance. They had endured chaos, faced death, and emerged not only alive but intact as a team. Yet each man carried invisible scars, the adrenaline residue, the memory of near misses, the knowledge that one wrong step could have ended everything. Mason glanced at the hostages, huddled quietly in the center of the vehicle. Relief radiated from their faces, mingled with shock and gratitude. Every SEAL understood that tonight had been about more than combat. It had been about saving lives, threading courage and skill through a landscape of chaos, and ensuring that those who could not defend themselves walked away alive. The weight of responsibility pressed on each operator, a reminder that survival was intertwined with duty. Harris finally broke the silence, voice low. You ever think about what would have happened if he wasn't there? The question hung in the air. Mason's jaw tightened. I do, every second. But thinking about that doesn't help. He was there, and we survived. That's reality. That's all that matters. Daniels exhaled shakily, gripping Harris' arm. I can't. I don't know if I can fully accept that we lived only because someone else intervened. Harris placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. You don't have to accept it fully. You just survive. That's enough. Jenkins spoke next, tone quiet but reflective. Makes you rethink what survival really means. We trained for every possible scenario, every possible threat. But we couldn't control everything. Some things are beyond skill or planning. And yet, we made it through. Mason nodded. That's the truth. We plan, we execute, and we survive. But sometimes, survival comes from someone else, unseen, threading precision into chaos. The vehicles reached the base perimeter. The team disembarked carefully, weapons at the ready, scanning the terrain. Medics approached Daniels, taking over care for his injury, while Mason and the others debriefed briefly with commanding officers. Every report emphasized efficiency, coordination, and outcomes. But beneath the formal debriefing lay the unspoken truth. The mission had been saved by a single, unseen sniper whose identity had only just been revealed. Mason stood quietly after the debrief, staring at the horizon where the village lay in moonlit ruin. The battle was over, the hostages safe, and the enemy defeated. Yet the memory of near death, of bullets whizzing past, of chaos threading every step, lingered like a shadow. And the unseen guardian, the sniper, remained a ghostly figure in their minds. Without him, they would not have survived. With him, they had not only survived, but prevailed. Harris joined Mason, voice low. "You ever think we'll see him again?" Mason shook his head. "Maybe, maybe not. But what he did? It's permanent in the lives he saved. That's enough. A man doesn't need recognition. He doesn't want it. That's his way." Daniels, recovering slightly, added quietly, "It still feels unreal, almost like a dream." Mason smiled. Faintly, a dream forged in the harshest reality. One we'll never forget. The team returned to their barracks later that night. Quiet dominated the halls as men tended to injuries, cleaned weapons, and reflected on the mission. Every operator carried the duality of relief and tension. Alive, yet aware of how close death had been, how fragile survival truly was. Each heartbeat echoed the reality that courage, skill, and unseen intervention had combined to thread life through chaos. Mason sat on a bunk, staring at the ceiling, replaying moments of the firefight. He visualized the sniper above the rocks, invisible, lethal, threading bullets with precision that had saved lives. Every shot, every high-value neutralization, every split-second timing had been calculated to perfection. Mason exhaled slowly. "We survived? Because someone believed in precision, in timing, in saving lives," he murmured. "And they did it alone." As dawn broke over the base, the SEALs emerged from the shadows of the night. The first light reflected on weary faces, highlighting the scars of battle and the weight of survival. They were alive, victorious, and indelibly marked by the mission. And somewhere, out of sight, the sniper Sergeant Callahan had disappeared into the shadows once more, a guardian of life and death, whose story would remain intertwined with theirs forever. Mason gathered his team one last time, voice calm, but solemn. "We faced near death. We survived because of each other, and because someone else gave us a chance when we needed it most. Remember that. Carry it. Honor it. Live it." Harris, Daniels, Jenkins, and Reed nodded, silent acknowledgement passing between them. Survival had been hard won, but the memory of the ghost sniper unseen, revealed, and then gone would remain forever. The night was over, the village behind them, but the lessons endured: courage, trust, and the unseen threads of life and death that could determine the outcome of every mission. SEAL Team Alpha had survived near certain annihilation, not only through skill and training, but through the intervention of a single extraordinary ally. The story would live in their memory, a testament to human resilience, precision, and the invisible hand of fate.